When my daughter-in-law arrived at the hospital right after my son's death, her first question to the lawyer wasn't about the funeral, but, "When do we read the will?" The fateful call came at 2 a.m. At 67, I had learned that no good news ever arrives in the middle of the night. My trembling hand reached for the phone on the third ring. A mechanical, unfamiliar voice on the other end informed me that my son, James, had died in a car accident on his way home from a late meeting. My world shattered. I had buried my husband 10 years prior, but the pain of losing a child was an entirely different abyss, a cruel inversion of the natural order. I arrived at the hospital in a daze, still in my pajamas beneath my coat. And there, amidst the cold antiseptic smell and the harsh fluorescent lights, I saw Sophia, James's wife. She wore a designer outfit, her perfect makeup seemingly untouched by the tragedy. But something was off. My instinct as a former financial investigator surged, sharper than the grief tearing at me. Sophia wasn't just cold, she was agitated. Her eyes constantly darted towards her phone, her fingers impatiently tapping the screen. Then she hurried to a corner of the hallway, and I overheard a whispered call, her voice urgent. "The plan has to change. Everything's messed up." What plan? Even as my heart broke from losing my son, a glacial current of suspicion began to seep in. Days later, we sat in the office of Thomas Bennett, James's close friend and lawyer. Thomas's grief was evident in his reddened eyes, a stark contrast to Sophia's chilling composure. As Thomas began to read the will, the air in the room thickened. James left Sophia the vacation home and a substantial life insurance policy. A flicker of smugness crossed Sophia's face, then confusion, and finally poorly concealed fury as Thomas continued reading. The primary residence at 1742 Oakwood Drive, the entire valuable art collection, and the management of Lucas's educational trust fund are bequeathed to the deceased's mother, Mrs. Eleanor Reynolds. Sophia froze. "No way," she hissed. "That collection, that house, they're ours." Thomas calmly pushed a stack of documents across the table. Everything was in James's name. This will was updated 6 weeks ago, fully legal and witnessed. 6 weeks ago. My investigator's mind began to connect the dots. James's sudden business trips, his tired, distant demeanor in our last few meetings, and now Sophia's plan that has to change. James had known something. He had acted to protect his legacy, to protect his son. He had structured his estate like a financial fortress, and I was its guardian. After Sophia stormed out with a promise to fight this all the way, Thomas asked me to stay. He looked at me, his face serious. "Eleanor, there's one more thing. James instructed me to give it to you only after the will was read." He didn't hand me a letter. Instead, from his desk drawer, Thomas retrieved a cold, old-fashioned metal key and placed it in my palm. "What is it?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "A key to a safe deposit box at First National Bank," Thomas replied. "He said everything you need to know is in there. He trusted your meticulousness and keen eye more than anyone." I clutched the key. The coldness of the metal seemed to transmit directly to my heart. This wasn't a dying wish. This was an instruction, a beginning. My son, a talented architect, had drawn the final blueprint of his life, not with pencil on paper, but with legal clauses and locked secrets. And he had entrusted me, a retired investigator, with the final and most important case of my career, to uncover the truth behind his death and secure my grandson's future. The bank vault room was cold and silent, a chilling contrast to the storm raging within me. The key fit perfectly. The heavy metal door of the safe deposit box swung open, revealing a simple velvet box. Inside, not jewelry or property deeds, but a tablet and a carefully sealed envelope. My hands trembled as I opened the letter. James's handwriting, achingly familiar. "Mother, if you are reading this, It means I no longer have the chance to resolve things myself. I apologize for leaving this burden to you, but there is no one I trust more. My marriage has been fractured for a long time. I discovered Sophia was not only having an affair with her business partner, Richard Harlow, but they were also secretly siphoning family assets into his risky investment schemes. I tried to stop it, but she is too cunning. I fear she will squander all the inheritance I wish for Lucas. All the evidence I collected is on this tablet. Use your skills, Mother. For Lucas. Protect him. I turned on the tablet. It was like a meticulously prepared case file. Bank statements with unusual transfers highlighted in red. Email chains between Sophia and Richard filled with phrases like our future and just a little more patience. And then I clicked on an audio file. James's voice came through, tired and strained. Sophia's voice replied, cold and sharp as a knife. You're gambling our son's future on someone you just met, James said, his voice trying to remain calm. You don't understand, James, Sophia replied, her voice devoid of remorse. This is my chance. I feel trapped in this life. I want to be free. I want something of my own. Trapped. That word cut me like a blade. Trapped with my wonderful son, with my adorable grandson. My heart sank, but the investigator's mind sharpened. My mission was clear. Leaving the bank, I was no longer a grieving mother. I was an actress on the most important stage of my life. The play had begun, and Sophia, without making me wait long, walked right into the trap. She called me that very afternoon. Eleanor. Her voice was falsely sweet. I've been thinking a lot. I know all these legal documents are complicated for you. You don't need to worry about them. I let out an exaggerated sigh, trying to make my voice sound shaky and tired. Oh, Sophia, I really don't understand anything. Everything's just a whirl. I'm just an old woman. It was bait, and Sophia swallowed it immediately. A few days later, she came to the house, bringing Lucas as an emotional shield. After letting him play in the garden, she sat opposite me, her face full of sympathy. Aunt Eleanor, I have a proposition. To simplify everything for Lucas, so he doesn't have to suffer any more stress. You should sign over the house and the trust fund management to me. In return, I'll ensure you have a generous monthly allowance. You won't have to worry about money anymore. Just enjoy your old age and visit Lucas whenever you wish. What a brazen move. Using my son's legacy to bribe me, and using my grandson as a hostage. A cold rage coiled in my chest, but outwardly I feigned confusion and a hint of gratitude. Oh, that's very generous, Sophia. But I need time to think. Everything is so sudden. As soon as she left, I began my work. My dormant investigative skills reawakened. I kept a meticulous, methodical notebook. Every one of Sophia's lies was recorded. October 15. Sophia said she had an important client meeting downtown. Credit card statements showed she dined at a fancy French restaurant with Richard. Lucas was left with a babysitter he had only met once. October 22. Sophia complained about living expenses. Credit card statements again showed a new Chanel handbag and a spa treatment costing hundreds of dollars. I also secretly installed software into the house's security system, which James had installed long ago. It didn't record inside, but it logged all unusual activity. The night Sophia came home at 2 a.m., the times Richard's sports car parked on the corner for a few minutes before she left. Each piece of data was a brick, building a solid wall of evidence around her. I played the role of a vulnerable elderly mother-in-law, seemingly softening to her daughter-in-law's generosity. Meanwhile, backstage, I was gathering every strand, preparing to tighten the noose of truth around her neck. Sophia thought she was directing the play, but she didn't know that I was the true director. I delayed signing the documents for 2 weeks. Each time Sophia asked, I invented a new excuse. I need my lawyer to review it, but he's on vacation, or I'm not sure about the tax implications, Sophia. We have to be careful. I saw her patience dwindling like sand through an hourglass. Her sweet facade began to crack, revealing the selfish and cruel nature beneath. And then, the last straw. Sophia cornered me in the hallway after I had just seen Lucas off to school. No more fake smiles, her eyes were ice cold. "I'm tired of your games, Eleanor," she hissed, her voice low and threatening. "If you don't sign by the end of this week, Lucas and I are moving to California. Richard has a big business opportunity there. You know the laws in that state, don't you? Grandparent rights are practically non-existent. You'll never see Lucas again. Choose." A chill ran down my spine. But not from fear, but from confirmation. This was it. The blatant threat. The desperate person's last weapon. She had personally handed me the bullet I needed. "I'll think about it," I replied, my voice perfectly shaky, then turned away before she could see the determined glint in my eyes. Immediately, I called Thomas. "We have enough, Thomas. She just threatened to take Lucas away. We have to act now." Within 24 hours, an emergency guardianship petition was filed with the court. Sophia's threat was the spark, but the entire cache of evidence I had painstakingly collected was the gunpowder, the meticulous notebook, credit card statements, security logs, and most importantly, the tablet containing James's final legacy. The courtroom was filled with a suffocating tension. Sophia, in an elegant black dress, looked like a grieving widow bullied by her mother-in-law. Her lawyer, a smooth talker, painted a portrait of me as a bitter, jealous old woman trying to steal her daughter-in-law's assets by manipulating her poor grandson. I sat still, maintaining a calm expression, letting him spew his venom. I glanced at Sophia, seeing her nod faintly in satisfaction. She thought she was winning. Then it was Thomas's turn. He stood up, calm but powerful. He presented each piece of evidence logically and methodically, from Sophia's neglect of Lucas to her dubious financial dealings with Richard. Sophia's lawyer repeatedly objected, but the judge overruled him. And then Thomas delivered the decisive blow. "Your Honor, we would like to present an audio recording. This is the last conversation between my client, the deceased, and Mrs. Jensen." Sophia's lawyer sprang to his feet. "Objection! This recording cannot be authenticated. We have an expert ready to authenticate the voices, Your Honor," Thomas calmly replied. "And it was found among the deceased's personal effects." The judge nodded. "Proceed." Thomas pressed play. The courtroom fell silent as my son's voice filled the air, clear and full of pain. "You're gambling our son's future." And then Sophia's voice replied, cold and defiant. "I feel trapped. I want to be free." I looked at Sophia. Her face was ashen. Her mask of the grieving widow had shattered, revealing the naked, selfish truth. Her confession, echoing from the grave, condemned her. The air in the room thickened. Even her lawyer was speechless. It was the moment truth triumphed. Sophia's play had ended. The judge, a woman with stern eyes, stared directly at Sophia for a long moment before delivering her verdict. Her voice rang out clearly, without hesitation. "Based on the evidence presented, particularly Mrs. Jensen's own admission and the clear indications of emotional neglect towards the child, as well as the intent to remove the child from this jurisdiction, the court finds sufficient grounds for emergency intervention." She paused for a second. "Temporary guardianship of the minor, Lucas Reynolds, effective immediately, is granted to his paternal grandmother, Mrs. Eleanor Reynolds. The court also orders a full and thorough investigation into Mrs. Sophia Jensen's parental fitness. The next hearing will be scheduled after the investigation results are available." The judge's gavel struck, the sound as definitive as a full stop. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past weeks finally lift. I had won, but this was not a victory to celebrate. This was a release. I looked at Sophia. Her eyes blazed with a hateful fire. aimed directly at me. I knew this battle wasn't over, but at least, for now, Lucas was safe. He was safe in the arms of the person who would always put him first, and that was all that mattered. The court's comprehensive investigation was like a cold dissection of Sophia's life. Every credit card statement, every absence, every lie was exposed under the harsh light of truth. Stripped of access to James's assets and facing the prospect of intense scrutiny, Sophia finally realized she had lost. The wall of evidence that James and I had built was impregnable. Richard, her partner in crime, was now urging her to retreat. He didn't want to be dragged into a messy legal battle that could jeopardize his business ventures. "Walk away, Sophia," I could imagine him saying. "We'll start over somewhere else, without the baggage." And Sophia made a chillingly pragmatic decision, a decision that perfectly defined who she was. She chose freedom. Through her lawyer, she offered to completely relinquish her parental rights. No dispute, no appeal. In return, she wanted her remaining assets, the vacation home and life insurance policy, settled quickly, without any further financial investigation. She had sold her son for a ticket to a new life. I accepted without hesitation, because Lucas's peace was worth more than any fight. Years passed. The house that once resonated with the silence of grief was now filled with laughter, lively homework debates, and the smell of cookies baking on weekends. Lucas grew taller than me, becoming a smart, poised teenager. The sadness of his lost father never completely vanished, but it had settled into a warm memory, no longer a throbbing wound. What warmed my heart most was seeing him spend hours at the drawing table, sketching houses, bridges. James's passion for architecture had been rekindled in his son. Lucas lived a stable, happy, and secure life. Everything James had sacrificed to protect. One quiet autumn evening, as Lucas was in his room studying, I sat alone in James's study, which had now become our shared space. I flipped through one of his old sketchbooks, my most cherished mementos, and then, tucked between the pages, I found a drawing I had never seen before. It was a detailed sketch of a small, cozy house with a spacious garden, shaded by a large oak tree. Every line exuded peace and familiarity. And in the bottom corner, in James's handwriting, was a short note. For Mom and Lucas, a place to start anew. Tears silently fell. Now I understood. The true legacy my son left was not in bank vaults or complex legal clauses. It was not material wealth to be seized or fought over. His legacy was the truth he bravely confronted. It was the security he meticulously crafted. It was the love he wrapped into every final action of his life. He had built a fortress, not of brick and stone, but of foresight and love, to protect those he loved most from the storm he knew was coming. I looked out the window, towards the backyard. Lucas had just stepped out, watering can in hand, beginning to tend the rose bushes we had planted together. The golden sunset light enveloped him, like a warm embrace. I stood up and joined him in the garden. Together we cared for our small garden, under the shade of the tree James would have loved. Amidst the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers, I felt his presence, strong and peaceful. We had started anew, just as he had wished. And in this peace we were continuing his greatest legacy, a legacy of love, which would never fade. 58.7 seconds. Use arrow up and arrow down to select a turn. Enter to jump to it, and escape to return to the chat.